Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1124 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. You know, honestly, I kind of thought that this was a weird chapter. I think that it could easily come off as filler or mid just because we're focusing on things that, you know, it's just not totally obvious why Oda wanted to do it. But I'll explain what I mean a little bit later in the review. Let's start from the beginning. Honestly, guys, one of my favorite things about life today, you know, the world that we live in, is that you never know if the news is real or not. It's fantastic. I liked it better when everything was made up. Fantasy is better than reality. It just keeps you on your toes. What is actually happening? The actual facts are oftentimes just really boring, you know? Frankly, it needs to be spiced up. I actively want everything to feel like an existential crisis, because then I truly feel alive. Honestly, we should give out awards. We should give out medals to news media that can twist the truth in the most absurd way. That is such an underappreciated talent. I mean, like, let's be honest, guys. They're treating the news and world events as though it is a novel. It needs plot twists. It needs stakes. The villains must be clearly defined so that we can properly root against them. And if nobody is quite villainous enough, then you just improve their characters so that they can perform their role. But that was probably a bad example because the world is filled with a lot of really good villains. They do this for heroes as well. Need a good MC, right? It's a damn art. Our attention spans are really not that good. You ever read a book or follow a TV show and get bored? They're out here doing saints work. So with this being said, it could be argued that, you know, Big News Morgans is the actual hero of the story. Love that guy. Money is the most important thing in life. Big News Morgans clearly understands this. Bro is on the grind. How can you hate him for that? Sarcasm aside, you guys already know that I love it when One Piece delves into social commentary. When historians look back at this time period of world history, I think that they're going to come to the conclusion that the internet changed everything. Fake news is as old as time itself. The mainstream media has always been a tool and arm of propaganda for whatever government. But the difference is now we know. Now we get to see every other perspective. It's honestly wild how quickly media started to get outcompeted by people like me, like YouTubers. And it is equally wild how quickly our government put their hands around our necks to stop us from talking. No balanced or nuanced opinions allowed here. But yeah, it used to be the case when I was a kid that you'd have the newspaper delivered to your house, right? And you actually needed to read whatever the newspaper, whoever controlled the newspaper, you needed to read that to know anything about what was going on nationally or internationally. World news. The internet totally destroyed this business model. Frankly, I don't even understand how these businesses still exist. Now you get everything for free. So in their desperation to keep our attention, of course, they decided to sensationalize everything. Everything. Love to see it. But yeah, there was some pretty brutal quotes from Oda about this, and he doesn't really hold back. Like, our man Oda is not a fan. Very clearly a hater. And for that matter, Vivi is a hater as well. But yeah, let's not skip over the fact that Big News Morgans literally threatened Vivi to expose her if she stood in his way. Weaponizing journalism is fun. You gotta love Vivi and everybody who has a similar mindset, because they will absolutely drag you if you step out of line. And honestly, her logic was on point of like, look, if the world is gonna get destroyed anyway, might as well stand for what I believe in. But through this, there's the potential here for a Chekhov's gun. Oda hinting at where he might go in the future. Morgan says, I hope you won't come to regret talking back to me, princess. I would take Morgan's threat very seriously. Just straight up, Morgan's is not a good guy, right? He does not have the best interests of everybody in mind. And so right now you have to be asking the question of why exactly is Morgans allowing Vivi and Wapol on his news blimp? What's in it for him? I think that Vivi and Wapol are news that Morgans has the ability to manufacture. Morgans thrives when there is conflict and there is chaos, and he is certainly not above making it happen himself. My opinion is that we hurtled to the end of the story. Most likely, Morgan's news perspective is going to be manipulated most by those that are willing to threaten him. I don't think the heroes of the story are going to threaten Morgans. That'll be the world government, the Gorosei, and Imo. So ultimately, the story that he tells at the end of the story is going to highly favor them for his own self-preservation. But beyond that, peace is something that Morgans will never advocate for, because peace is not interesting. So Vivi winning in the end is something he is going to oppose. At some point to me, it seems very, very obvious that Morgans is going to release a hit piece about Vivi. making her out to be one of the greatest evils on the planet. I think that when the dust settles at the end, Vivi's most important role in the story is going to be trying to preserve or reform the world government, because I don't actually think that the world government, I don't think the story is intending to paint the world government as a bad idea. It seems very unlikely to me that Oda is going to abdicate against the system that allows for the cooperation and interaction of nations from across the world, so long as it is not at the expense of the people of those nations. Really, the problem with the world government in the story of One Piece right now is really simply the Celestial Dragons. We have this charade, basically, of like, look, this is a place where every nation gets to join up and have equal say, but like in reality, right, the Celestial Dragons are gods. The rules do not apply to them. They have the most power and the most money, and they use it. But when they're defeated, Vivi is going to need credibility. And so in that, I think that Morgans has the potential to play an actually important story narrative role. I also found it really interesting how Morgans knows that the world is in danger of flooding, but he doesn't care. He doesn't care because he's a bird and he flies on a blimp and he basically lives in the sky. Flooding poses no threat to him. I have a theory that I'll link in the description below, which basically describes how the world of One Piece works, why exactly weapons are causing flooding, all of these things, and it makes a lot of sense to me. But the basic premise of the theory is that the entire world of One Piece that we see right now is built atop the former Sky Islands. There were Sky Islands of the past, which is basically acting like the ground today. So the whole world works about the same as the island of Water 7 and the island of Wano. So whether or not it's true or not, it's just interesting to me how Morgans doesn't seem to care about flooding because he's a creature of the sky, when this could have played out in the past. As a new great danger appeared in the world, the important people, the powerful people, moved up to the sky so that it was no longer their problem. But anyway, probably the best part of this chapter was everything to do with the Marines, Kizaru, and then at the end, Akainu. The panel of Kizaru angrily crying at Akainu hits all that much harder, just because we've been with Kizaru, we've seen him for, you know, like 800 chapters, and not once in that entire time span has he shown really any emotion. They broke him. So after everyone was knocked out by Joy Boy's blast of Haki, Akainu calls and is looking for an update, but nobody will pick up the phone. The first person to wake up was Kizaru, and I think that that demonstrates his power probably more than anything in the entire arc. And frankly, we don't even know if he was knocked out in the first place. And so Akainu proceeds to accuse Kizaru of failing. And what Kizaru said is, in my opinion, one of the coldest lines in the entire series. Have you ever had to kill your best friend? As this is happening, you get a brief flashback of Kizaru's relationship with Vegapunk and really explains that they were friends. Meanwhile, it's implied that Kizaru actually picked up the phone because Sentomaru was just beside his ship. That was his excuse for letting him go. The whole thing is heart-wrenching in the best way. I felt that. And apparently Akainu felt it as well. The line was so cold that for the first time ever, at the same time for the first time ever, we can see Akainu back off. Maybe the most human moment of Akainu throughout the entire series. That was my bad, brother. I freaking felt that as well. But yeah, guys, I think that you can see it in real time. The Marines are breaking. In the vast majority of cases, if people desire to become Marines, it's because they desire to be the good guy. They desire to be the hero. The Marines are supposed to be an avenue to justice however you see it. And it's not only becoming difficult to actually perform that role, which is probably the reason that Aokiji left. I think that it's become or is becoming difficult to even see yourself as a good guy, period. I'm gonna go out on a limb, and you guys let me know if I'm actually going out on a limb or if this is just what we should all be thinking, but I am entirely convinced that Kizaru leaves the Marines by the end of the story. I believe that. And I'm sure that some people are gonna say, well, I mean, bro killed his best friend, like what more could you possibly do? Like, what could possibly turn him? This is the point of no return. And what I think is that Kizaru cannot do it twice. The title of this chapter was Best Friend. I think that Kizaru is the most important character in this chapter, and Kizaru believes that he has killed his best friend. But we reach the end of the chapter. It goes back to the Straw Hats, and they're mourning the loss of Vegapunk, their failure. Luffy, the Yonko, could not save all of the Vegapunks. In fact, could only save one of them. But Lilith explains what it is that we have been saying over the last few chapters. She is Dr. Vegapunk. Vegapunk remains alive so long as one of his alters is still alive. Honestly, this is why the chapter felt a little bit mid, because first off, it was a short chapter, and then second off, like, the end of it focuses on the Straw Hats and their party and stuff, which already felt like something that we should be moving past. It felt a little repetitive, almost like filler. Nothing about it really moves the story forward, which is what we're really excited about, right? Egghead is over, next is Elbaf, we're ready to get there. Or at the very least, some other game-changing or really moving moments like Kizaru and Akainu. But I think that Oda included it because it was important to outright state that Vegapunk is not dead. And the reason it's important is because it contradicts what Kizaru believes. I think that it is likely that Kizaru encounters Lilith again in the future of the story. He is going to be tasked with killing her, or other Marines are going to be tasked with doing that, and I don't think that Kizaru will allow it twice. That is my strong opinion. And my other thought about this is just something that I wonder about. You know, like, there's times in which Oda does things that don't necessarily make sense to readers. Like, the end of this chapter, straight up, is not very hype. It's just not. I don't think that we needed it. And you could probably say the same about the beginning with Big News Morgans, because it's really just reiterating things that Oda has already implied or said. But I wonder if it was important to Oda to make sure to clarify that Vegapunk hadn't died before the party began. Like, that would have bothered him in some way, that they would be so quick to, you know, have this joyous end to Egghead after something like that had just happened. Like, Oda wanted to ensure that readers understood that Vegapunk's death was meaningful, impactful, and mattered. Or not just gonna forget in 2 seconds. But yeah, despite me saying this, I treat this a lot like Oda's obsession with numbers. He likes to end arcs on the 100 or the 50 mark. We didn't necessarily do it here, but it's just like, it's something that Oda clearly thinks is important that, you know, we don't necessarily understand. I see this in the same way. But the reality is that this chapter was very nuanced. I think that it has importance, but the importance is kind of low-key. And overall, I definitely wanted more from the chapter just reading it. So, but you know, sometimes it's like that. But yeah, just to talk more about this, there's also a layer to Luffy and Luffy's character that is important in all this, which is the fact that, like, Luffy said that he would do something, and he couldn't do it. This is effectively an Ace moment, but obviously not as profound and as personal to Luffy. I think that's something that a lot of people would gloss over about all of this, is even when Pedro died as an example, or Yasu died as an example, Luffy did not straight up promise to them that he would protect them or that he would save them. Luffy's word matters to him, because when he says it, he's not just saying it. He believes it in his soul. I can do that. I will do that. Probably a conversation that a lot of One Piece fans aren't ready for is that Luffy's psyche is more fragile than you would realize. For Luffy to become the best version of himself, he's got to win constantly. If he starts doubting himself in any way, it undermines everything that he believes. It undermines his entire worldview. He's not the type of person that's just gonna shrug it off and say, you know, you win some and you lose some. Luffy expects to win them all. Not doing so has the potential to destroy him. So again, the end of this chapter might actually have been important, at least for Oda, to make sure that Luffy's character remains consistent. This is what victory and defeat mean to him. This is why victory or defeat is important. And the fact that Oda is emphasizing it here could imply that sometime in the future, this aspect of Luffy's character is going to come up again. And he wants to make sure that it is consistent. But anyway, a random thought that I had about Lilith during the chapter is, like, she wakes up and the first thing that she does is she touches her earpiece thing, it beeps, and then she gathers everything that occurred that she missed. It feels like Lilith is still connected to Punk Records. And I think that there are two interpretations of this that I'm toying around with. The first, my immediate thought, honestly, when reading the chapter is like, well, all the Vegapunks that died, physically died, didn't actually die because their spirits or their consciousnesses is stored in the data of the Punk Records, the main Vegapunk brain. So they are literally not dead. And if Lilith ever regained access to Punk Records, she could effectively copy who they are back into a body of some sort, so they would literally be back alive by the end of the story. This could straight up be Lilith's goal moving forward, like what it is that she intends on doing now that she is the Stella. This could straight up be Lilith's goal in the story, to revive the other Vegapunks, which is actually possible. But the more that you think about this, the more interesting it becomes, because we're essentially speculating that the Vegapunk consciousnesses, their souls, their spirits exists within Vegapunk Records, this brain, but also this thing which connects everybody. It's basically like Punk Records is the afterlife, which is actually something similar to a thing that we said in one of the theory videos. I cannot remember which one. What I did was I compared Punk Records to the internet today, and the interesting thing about the internet is that there's like an essence of us, that those of us who interact on it, we leave there forever. My YouTube channel is not going to be terminated, it's not going to be deleted. It will exist on YouTube for as long as YouTube exists, even after I have died. The reality is as the internet gets older and older, it will accumulate the souls of the deceased. It becomes a metaphorical afterlife, where you can literally, in some cases, hear the voices of those that are no longer here. And so applying this back to Vegapunk and Punk Records, I just wonder whether Lilith can literally hear the other Vegapunks through her connection with Punk Records. But you know, even if this isn't literally the case, I think that metaphorically, this could also work in a similar way. The Vegapunks Estella and the Alters have been hooking up with Punk Records, and through it, a lot of their experiences are saved forever. It reminds me of what Dr. Hiruluk said when he said that a man dies when he is forgotten. Lilith is like literally a receptacle to all of their life experiences from a first-person perspective. Or, you know, you don't have to complicate this at all and just like Lilith is genetically Vegapunk, literally an aspect of Vegapunk's brain, so long as she's alive and Vegapunk is alive, and you could just stop there, and that's cool as well. But yeah, I think that this was another thing that the chapter did really well, is I was already interested in Lilith, but it makes me even more interested in her. I think that she is a fascinating character. I think, you know, even just like the subtle question of like Vegapunk deemed her the evil Vegapunk, but what about her exactly is evil? We really do not know at this point in time. I think that it is intriguing. I want to know more. Honestly, she is a welcome addition to the story in Elbaf and going forward. But of course, the last thing to talk about with the chapter is, in typical Oda fashion, right? We end the chapter with a mysterious silhouette. There is somebody in Elbaf who seems ready for the Straw Hats to arrive. He says, come on then. Is it the man marked by flames? Is it Skopper Gaban? Is it Loki? Just to overanalyze this for a second, just judging by the clothes, it seems kind of like Wano. When you look at it, it looks like he's wearing a large straw hat. Am I the only one who thinks that? I'm not gonna put the panel up, but like you can look at the chapter, does it look like he's wearing a large straw hat? Because that reminds me of a cover story from like chapter 624. I could be wrong about that number, but it's a cover story with a person in a very large straw hat with Wano-like attire talking to Crocus. We don't get to see their face, we see them from behind. This is an actual character in the story of One Piece that Oda has not explained at all, and like straight up, you know, like this character needs to appear and do something at some point in time. I think that who we see at the end of this chapter in Elbaf is that guy. And at one point in time, many a moon ago, we speculated that this person might be Yorkie of the Rumbar Pirates. Did they burn off his skin disease? Legitimate question. I suppose that we will find out. But yeah, guys, that's everything that I had to say. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Whether you know something from the chapter that I might have missed, just share your thoughts. If you're interested in checking out my book, link will be in the description. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.